Wounded Worlds and Luck and Loose Ends, now available on Amazon and coming soon to Audible. Links below.
Picture this. A dusty New Mexico cattle town of less than 1,000 people. There's not a single building taller than one story. The two-lane highway that runs through town is the only way in or out. Drive along that highway in either direction and all you'll find is ranches and dust. In the center of the town is its one and only ice cream shop, and manning the counter of that ice cream shop, his hand propping up his cheek, is me. My name is Knight Newman. Yep, Knight. As in the fellows who fight dragons and giants and whatnot. I reckon my parents thought it was a rather unique name, and I guess they were right about that. Haven't been to a single school yet where no one thought it awfully damn clever to make some sort of comment about it. Not that there's that many schools around here to pick from, of course. In fact, some dude named Knight might be the most interesting factoid about this little town. I visited the town website once, and the only thing that any potential visitor crazy enough to look us up will see is placeholder text. That's right. The damn site went live without anyone in the town council or chamber of commerce or whoever handles that crap giving enough of a damn to write down a great place to visit if you like the smell of baked cow shit on a 100-degree day. That's what I'd put anyway. All that said, the best place to escape the smell of baked cow shit on a 100-degree day is right here in the ice cream store. It's also a great place to learn the value of $1, according to my folks. Not that the $6.50 minimum wage leaves me all that many dollars to value after taxes. Still, there's one more perk working here that keeps me from locking myself in the freezer to await the sweet release of death. It's the view. I don't mean the town, of course. Lord knows there's nothing to look at. I mean the one person in the whole town who can actually make a paper hat and a pink apron look half decent. Her name is Sunny Park. No, she's not the victim of another set of creative parents. It's Park because that's apparently a common Korean last name, and Sunny because Suejin just sounds foul in an American Southwestern accent. What kind of psychopaths travel all the way from Korea to have a kid in a dust bowl like this? I'll never know. Nor will I complain given the result. We go to the same high school, which, now that I think on it, isn't a surprise since everyone goes to the same high school. But not everyone gets 4 hours alone with her Monday through Wednesday, which doesn't really matter because I haven't made great use of that time either. Man, you know how some girls can just break your heart without even knowing they've done it? Like, when the shop's not busy, we can bend each other's ears talking about all sorts of nonsense, but the instant the school day starts, it's a nod and smile and that's all you're getting. Can't be mad about it, I suppose. If she needs to say something to me, she's got 12 hours a week to do it, and I've let the thing I wanted to say to her slip by for... You know what? Best not to depress myself. I'll say it. I swear I will. Eventually. Today, though, I've got my own problems. The windows might be coated with fake frost and plastered with poorly painted reindeer, but I had a clear enough view of the parking lot, as well as the great big yellow bus pulling into it. "Hey, Sonny," I shouted to the back room. We got trouble. Trouble was the phrase we had unofficially agreed to mean both employees needed to be in the front. One would work the scoop, the other would work the register. That said, today I meant it a little more literally. The door on the bus heaved open, and from it poured a mass of sport jerseys caked with sweat, mud, and grass stains. "Hey, it's Lancelot," one of them said. "Lancelot," the rest echoed. "So it begins."
"What do you losers want?"
Sonny asked, but in that sort of playful tone girls use to let you know they're not serious.
Losers?
Sean Borquez asked, playing along.
Is that any way to speak to state champions?
Why? Oh, are they behind you?
Sunny replied, squinting out the window as if she was expecting another bust around the corner.
Well, we're champions at heart. Isn't that what matters?
Aw, you're all champions in my heart, too.
She cooed. Yeah, it's all banter, I know. But damn if it didn't piss me off. What do you losers want? I asked.
Why, Lancelot? You got some giants to slay?
Maybe. When does your mother get off work? Damn, that would have been such a burn. Instead, all I did was roll my eyes. Turns out they did want ice cream after all. Sunny dumped scoops into cones and I punched numbers into the register. Eventually, the order stopped coming and Coach Dishman sauntered in to pay the bill. Most of the team found their way to the outside tables and took their stink with them. But Sean had to stick around at the counter.
You know, if more girls from the school came by to cheer us on, we might do a little better out there.
Oh, so you'd lose by a little bit less?
She replied. Damn, that's exactly what I wanted to say. Sean laughed it off.
You are harsh, girl. Hey, if nothing else, I'd bet you'd love to see me get knocked around a bit.
She shrugged.
I have to work.
Every night?
Sunny actually thought about that for a second and I felt my heart sink. Sure, being asked to watch someone lose at football wasn't exactly a date. But it was something.
Do you guys play on Friday?
She asked.
We do this week.
Before I could catch Sunny's answer, one of the other meatheads called to me. Hey, Lancelot, we got a quest for you! They gestured to one of the steel outside tables, which they had left a total mess. Hey! Sean's bark cut through the general conversation noise like a knife. Everyone looked at him in surprise, including me.
That's just disrespectful, you assholes,
he said and reached to pull a couple wads of napkins from a dispenser. He handed them out to the quest givers and pointed at the table.
Clean that up like you're not a bunch of animals.
He even followed them outside to supervise the cleanup, and it was all I could do not to drop my jaw in shock. I glanced over to Sunny to make sure I was seeing this right. Yeah, I was definitely seeing this right. I must have. Her eyes didn't move from Sean once. The tidal wave of ball funk eventually passed, and so did quitting time. I bought a pint of Rocky Road with my own money and clocked out. Sunny's mother pulled into the parking lot, and with a wave and a smile, I was on my own. No parental taxi service for me. I had to make it home on the hoof. But today there'd be a little detour. See, that pint of Rocky Road wasn't for me. It was for my, well, friend isn't exactly the right word. I guess to explain, I need to start from the top. Over in the mobile home park is a man named Chuck Lansley. That's Dr. Charles Lansley, if we're being formal. He's not a people doctor, though. He's one of them, science doctors. A physicist. Grew up right in town, studied at whichever university someone goes to learn that stuff. Got a job at some lab back here in New Mexico. Anyway, he'd do a sort of summer science experience program for the kids in town every year. My parents made me go a couple times, and while I liked watching the colors change in the beakers or making that weird hot foam stuff, none of it really stuck. It was all neat, sure, but I just didn't care about why it worked. Which I'm told by Dr. Lansley is what makes a good scientist. So that's how things went for a while until things changed with old Chuck. I mean, he went from a nice house one town over to a silver bullet in the middle of nowhere. I was a sophomore at the time, and I don't know what possessed me to look him up, but I think we're both glad I did. Chuck isn't doing too great these days. He's healthy, I guess, but he can barely take care of himself. Or maybe he just doesn't want to. Anyhow, I look in on him from time to time and we share a pint of ice cream for the trouble. I came to the trailer and gave the special knock. Yes, we have a special knock. The door opened and a man in a stained white undershirt and abused sweatpants greeted me.
Hello, Mr. Newman.
He said. Howdy, Chuck. How's Rocky Road tonight? He stared at me for a moment as if he didn't understand the question. Then he nodded.
Fine,
he said, waving me in. While he didn't care about his own appearance too much, his trailer was not the rat's nest you would expect from a guy like him. In fact, he had modified a lot of it to keep his various manuals and equipment well organized and laid out. He reached up to a radio as soon as we walked in and switched it off. He always did that, which was odd because it never seemed to be playing anything. He then reached into a drawer and pulled out a couple dollars. I sighed and prepared for our opening ritual. Chuck, I keep telling you, don't worry about it. You need it more than me. He looked at me and there just seemed to be even more missing in him than usual. He sighed and returned it to the drawer. I made my way over to the living half of the trailer and grabbed some bowls from his cabinets and dolloped out the ice cream for the both of us. For his part, he picked out a couple of mugs and poured some coffee for the two of us. We each took a seat and gave the mug he handed me a once-over. It had some sort of gag print on it, an ancient athlete or something acting out like he was throwing an object. The action line wrapped around the mug and ended in some sort of frisbee that looked like it was going to hit him in the back of the head. There were words around the rim of the mug, but I couldn't understand them. Preparet, eventus, improvisus. My guess is that a physicist would find that hilarious. I glanced at Doc Lansley and found him staring at his bowl of ice cream like it was a bowl of cold cow shit instead. Whatever was going on, he was not having a good night. "What's the matter, Professor? Girl trouble?" He snapped up, and I swear he looked at me like I had grown an extra head. Then he laughed. It was a great roaring belly laugh like I had just told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. I needed that.
Chuck dug out his first bite of ice cream and chewed it.
Interesting choice, Rocky Road,
he said. It was to the left of the last flavor, Chuck. Don't read too much into it.
But do you know why it's called Rocky Road?
Because it's brown and crunchy like a rocky road?
A valid but overly literal interpretation, Mr. Newman. There's a rather more poetic reason this ice cream got its name.
I rolled my eyes. Do tell, Professor. Do tell.
It came about during the Great Depression, which I'm sure you'll agree was a very...
He raised his bowl.
Rocky road for America.
God damn it, Chuck. I chuckled, my face in my hand. He smiled back and then it was gone. Come on, Professor, what is it? He chewed on another bite, seeming to decide between being straight with me or telling another useless factoid.
Mr. Newman, you've been, these past years...
He sighed and tried again.
I've enjoyed our chats, Mr. Newman. I realize that you felt somewhat obligated, and I, selfishly, did not disabuse you of that notion. I was actually hoping you'd come by tonight, but I've been dreading what I have to say.
Oh, don't tell me, Doc. Lizard people in the government? Slug people in the sewers? The man did not even flinch.
I taught you about the scientific method, didn't I, all those years ago?
Let me see. Hercules without the Ulysses, hypothesize, experiment, record, and conclude. He took a breath like he was about to correct me, then shook his head.
Good enough for children. Research and analysis have a place in there, but that's fine. Do you know what the scientific method will never, ever tell you?
I shrugged.
It will only tell you whether you can do something, not whether you should. For that, we have ethics.
Isn't that kind of like the scientific method? Like, ethics has rules, and if you break the rules, the methodology isn't sound, right? He smiled.
Well, there's only one generally accepted scientific method, while there are, I think, 4 schools of ethics. But the thing is, ethics, they aren't a predictive model. They can't really tell you if the thing no one's ever done before is the thing they ought to do. For example, when they were about to test the first nuclear explosive, there was a small but serious worry that the reaction would burn so hot that it would start a chain reaction in the atmosphere and burn off all the planet's oxygen. So tell me, Mr. Newman, was it ethical to test that device?
If it could set the planet on fire? I guess not.
But it didn't, and once we had solid math, we realized it couldn't. Nuclear warheads today are many, many times more powerful than those initial tests, and we still haven't set our atmosphere on fire.
Still, nukes are weapons. Their entire purpose was to kill people, so the end result would have been somewhere between killing someone and everyone. Pretty sure there's no ethical school that says that's okay. He grunted.
So, would it have been more ethical to shoot everyone working on the Manhattan Project? Should someone have blown Oppenheimer's head clean off his shoulders?
I stared at Chuck. It might have been my imagination, but it was like he wasn't just making conversation, he really wanted to know what I thought the answer was. Well, I mean, I know it worked out, but if someone was living back then and knew what they were doing and knew what the nuke might do, I think there's an argument.
Screw your argument,
Chuck shouted. I jumped in my chair and dang near spilled my coffee.
It's 1944, there's a loaded Colt 45 in your hand, and Robert Oppenheimer is across the street having a sandwich, having no idea what that nuke might do should you walk up to him and pull the trigger, yes or no?
I'm not sure what noise I made, but it wasn't an answer. Charles Lansley had been weird these last couple years, but it's only now I thought he might be dangerous. Jesus, Chuck, the hell's wrong with you? Something about him changed. The anger just melted away and he sank in his chair.
I'm sorry.
He put his bowl down and rubbed his head. Chuck, buddy, you're starting to scare me. I can get you on a bus, maybe we can go down to the clinic.
I am not crazy, Mr. Newman. I'm sorry for scaring you. I really didn't mean to. I was more yelling at myself than anyone. Forget it. Finish your ice cream.
Oh, I was not letting that go. Nah, Chuck. I need to know what this is about. He sighed and stared off into space, chewing over his thoughts in the way smart people do when they need to simplify things for less smart people.
At what temperature does water freeze, Mr. Newman?
No, we ain't doing this, Chuck.
Please, just one last time, humor me.
32 degrees. He closed his eyes and made a big breath through his nose. Fine, 0 degrees Celsius.
So, under all circumstances, if the water's temperature is below 0 degrees, it will freeze, right?
Right.
Wrong, Mr. Newman. We have methods known as supercooling that allows us to cool water below 0 degrees while still maintaining its liquid form. That's why I fell in love with physics, Mr. Newman. Just when you think you know the rules, you realize you had no idea what game you were really playing.
Chuck, I'm still waiting to hear your point. I know things have been hard on you for a while, and I'm starting to think that leaving you here is not going to be a very responsible thing. He chuckled at that.
Well, Mr. Newman, between the two of us, I'd say you're probably the better judge on what the responsible thing to do. I promise there's a point to all of this, but all of this preamble really is necessary. You are aware that in older video games there were such things as cheat codes, right?
Sure. Used to be you could press a sequence of buttons and get like extra lives or skip a level or something.
Exactly. Physics is full of cheat codes like supercooling. That's not precisely accurate, you understand, as you are not altering the code of the universe.
But sometimes something that's generally true isn't always true. I'm with you, Doc. Chuck smiled and seemed to relax a little.
Some years ago, my former colleagues and I stumbled upon one such cheat code. Now, Knight, I'd be violating several NDAs and classification orders if I even hinted at what we thought we discovered. Not to mention that, well, I'd be putting you in very real danger, and I'm not going to do that.
Well, that was something. Hell, it's more than I'd ever gotten out of him about his old job up to this point.
What I will say is that, as wonderful as this new discovery has the potential to be for the betterment of humanity, it also has risks. Risks on the same order as what they were working on in Los Alamos.
So, wait, this thing you were working on, it could do something like, set the atmosphere on fire?
No, I mean, not that, but just as bad. Maybe.
I sipped my coffee, really trying to make heads or tails of any of this. You sure you're smart?
Maybe less than I thought.
He sighed and nodded over to his various monitors and doohickeys.
I quit the project. Night after night, I did and redid the math, and there were several results I didn't like. I shared those results, but it was all unproven theory. Maybe I was right, but I probably wasn't. So said the administrator. So I said I wasn't going to be a part of it anymore, but I'm wondering.
He then gave me the most deadly serious look I'd ever seen.
If I should have, Oppenheimered the entire team.
He put 2 fingers to his head and mimicked a gunshot. I put all the dishes down. Chuck, okay, that's it.
They're close, you know.
He pointed at his equipment again.
I've been monitoring their progress. Cost me my house. Cost me everything. But I had to know, and now I do. They've made a breakthrough, and they're going to prove their concept as soon as maybe tomorrow.
He took a long pull from his coffee and poured what was left into his sink.
And I will either look like a fool, frittering away a fortune on a baseless concern, or...
He looked me dead in the eye.
I will be one of the few people on the planet who will know exactly why he's about to die.
I wanted to call him crazy. I wanted to tell him he'd snapped. But he wasn't ranting. He wasn't going on about lizard people or moon men. He seriously seemed to know what he was talking about, and that scared me more than anything he had said until that point. Doc, you know how crazy all this sounds, right?
You have no idea how much I hope it is.
He settled back into his chair and looked for all the world like he'd just heard his dog had died.
You best get home, Mr. Newman.
I stood up and made for his door. I put the bowl and the mug on the edge of his sink on my way out, but I stopped just before I left. Doc, earlier you said to humor you one last time, you don't really think the world is going to end tomorrow? He toyed with the mug I had put down, the one that had that little foreign phrase.
A colleague gave me this mug, Mr. Newman. It was sort of an inside joke between us. A joke that isn't so funny anymore.
He handed it back to me and I read the inscription again. Praeparat eventus improvisus.
That, Mr. Newman, is the most important advice in science and life in general. I advise you to look it up.
I meant to. Swear to God, I meant to. But the thing was, a voicemail had come through while I was out, and it was the sort of message that was just not possible to explain away to my irate old man.
Knight, get in here!
My dad shouted the instant I was through the door. I rolled my eyes but obeyed anyway. I found him and Mom in the living room. His finger was already hovering over the play button as I came in. My father is a figure that I think is best described as imposing. As a drunken aunt once put it, he's as wide as he is broad. He's the kind of man who's never turned down a bacon cheeseburger, but he's also never missed a day of work. God bless him, but the man loved his job. He fixed cars, but really loved doing the custom jobs. He'd bring me along to work if he could, but, something qualified technician, state regulations. You can't have a miner fixing cars for paying customers. All that nonsense, so ice cream shop for me for now. That isn't to say I hadn't picked up a thing or two in the meantime. But I digress. Right now, this great big moon of a man was brooding over the answering machine, and it was clear he wasn't at all happy about it. He punched down the play button, and after the beep, a voice began to play.
Hello, this message is for Knight Newman. This is Gunnery Sergeant Allers over at the Marine Recruiting Station in Roswell. You were here a couple of weeks ago, and had inquired as to whether MOS 2141 would be available after you graduate next spring. I made some phone calls, and it turns out that because you won't be graduating until after the next fiscal year starts, it's not clear how many 2141s we'll actually need. But I would still...
My old man slammed his finger on the stop button.
You want to explain this, boy? Because I'd really like to know how you intend to apprentice at the shop while you're off getting malaria or syphilis in Burma or wherever the hell they're gonna send you.
Look, Dad. All I did was ask if the Marines had any jobs that were like a vehicle mechanic or something. I mean, there's bases in the United States, right? I don't really need to go to war.
Stop. Boy, you never think about these things. No one is going to need you to fix military vehicles except the military. So that's one way you're wasting your time. Second, I already know how to fix cars, which is what I was going to teach you anyways. Third, if you need some ornery son of a bitch in your face motivating your ass at 4:30 in the morning, all you had to do was ask. I'm happy to motivate you something fierce.
And what about college? I wanted to ask. What about health insurance? But I kept my mouth shut because the real question was, what's the point? At the end of the day, he could scream at me all he wanted. I couldn't enlist without my parents' permission until I turned 18, which was only 5 months away now. It wasn't that I didn't like working on cars or even working with my dad at that. But come on, who would want to stay in this dead-end town? Heck, just getting out of the state would be something. Dad, it was just an interest card. I lied. It was Sam's idea mainly. I just went along with it because... What was I going to do, stare at him?
That does seem to be Sam's effect on you, sweetheart.
Mom said, not buying it for a second.
It would be very silly if you were to go off and join the army just because your friend did it.
That's one word for it,
Dad muttered. He pointed at me with those meaty fingers of his and said,
You ain't joining no army, boy. No Marines neither. There ain't nothing out there that you can't get right here.
God help me, it took everything I had not to argue with that.
I mean it, son. A good home, a good family, a good job. All of that's waiting for you right here. Only difference in the city is the number of digits on the bill and the amount of people trying to grab what little money you have left for crap you don't need. That goes double for the military. Lenders find a kid in uniform, and what they see is a sucker. Boom! Next thing you know, you're re-upping your enlistment for the 3rd time, getting shot at in some shithole. because that's the only job you can get to pay for your mistakes.
Fine, I said. Like I was saying, I didn't sign anything, so you're yelling at me over something I didn't do. Ain't I got enough to worry about? Dad was on his feet in a second.
Boy, are you sassing me?
He stopped when Mom put a hand on his shoulder.
No, he isn't, dear. He's just tired from a long day of school and work. Now you've said your piece and he's said his. Now, let's get some food in all of us and move on.
Well, the mention of food certainly did it. I could tell he had more to say, but that would mean delaying supper, so I was spared for now. I went to bed recalling that there was something I was supposed to do. Homework? No, that's right. It was something Dr. Lansley had said. Something in some kind of Greek? Screw it, I'll ask him tomorrow. Oh, yeah. There was something else I was supposed to do tomorrow. Rather, today now, I guess. It was a promise I had made to myself. I was going to say something to Sonny. Damn it. How the hell are you supposed to do this kind of thing? Must have been way easier back in the times where my dad could just talk to her dad. Christ, what am I getting so worked up about? She'll say no. So what? No law that says I have to keep working at the ice cream shop? Hell, in 5 months I'll be face down in the dirt, crawling under barbed wire and machine gun fire. So this isn't that big a deal, right? Well, the bus ride came and went. Sam was bending my ear about some game he's excited for, and Sunny spent the whole time gabbing with her friends. First period came and went, then second period. Now it's first break. Perfect, 15 minutes. No time to psych myself out. Just yes or no, and I get on with my life. I left my backpack with Sam and Kevin at our usual spot. Hey guys, can you watch this for me? I asked. Something I gotta do. Sam shrugged.
I'll watch it, but if someone grabs it, I'll watch 'em take it.
You're a true gentleman, Sam, I said, but I was already on my way. There she was, right in front of me, gaggled up with a bunch of other girls over in some corner of the quad. Well, this is gonna suck, but it's not as if word doesn't get around anyway. I marched right at her, and that's when I realized that I must really be more nervous about this than I thought. My heart was pounding so hard I could practically hear it. It wasn't until I was 4 paces in front of her, those pretty almond eyes right on me, that I realized what I was hearing wasn't my heart. I looked up, and right at that moment, the goofiest looking plane I ever saw flew right over the campus. It was real close, too. Not like some airliner thousands and thousands of feet up in the air. It was maybe just a couple hundred at best. It was colored tan with massive rotors at the very tips of its wings. That was about all I got before it had passed overhead. But I got a second look when another plane of the same type blasted by. This time I caught a couple more details. Etched in black on the tail section was the word Marines, and round about the ass end of the plane was an open hatch. Sure enough, dudes in uniforms kitted out for war stood or sat inside. One feller was even sitting behind a machine gun. At that moment, one thought entered my mind. That looks fun as shit, and that's exactly what I want to do. Before I could even process what I was seeing, another one made a pass, and another one. In all, maybe 15 of the things passed us before the herd thinned, leaving some 140 teenagers gawping at the sky. The thudding of rotors faded, and I turned to Sunny. She looked at me with an expression of utter confusion. Say, that was freaking weird. Anyway, want to go watch Sean Borquez lose at football together this Friday? Yeah, not that smooth, I'm afraid. All I got out was, before the bell rang, and Red Dawn or not, it was back to class for us.
Those were ospreys, idiot.
Sam said. Kevin shook his head.
No, those were Chinooks.
Chinooks are helicopters, dumbass.
Those were helicopters. Didn't you see those big-ass rotors?
They aren't rotors. They're... Knight, back me up here.
I perked up. Third period hadn't quite started yet, but we were all in our seats. While I'd enjoyed the surprise air show as much as anyone, something about it bugged me. Where do you think they were going? I asked, as I wasn't even going to pretend to know the differences between military aircraft.
What?
Sam asked, not expecting the question.
Oh, the missile base, obviously. What's it called? White Sands. Yeah, that's it.
Now, while I don't know much about the military or where it keeps its stuff, the White Sands missile range is fairly famous, at least in New Mexico. I'm also pretty sure it's west of us, whereas those Ospreys or Chinooks or whatever were heading east. See, the thing about living in a town that only has one main road heading north to south, You know your east and west pretty much by heart,
Nuh-uh, wrong way.
Kevin said before I could.
Them boys is headed to Texas.
Hey, you guys know about this sort of stuff?
That was Brittany Velasquez, and I swear on my mother that was the first time she had even acknowledged the existence of any of the three of us.
Sure, I mean, kinda.
Sam said, straightening up.
Maria said that those planes were Army, but I saw on the sides it said Marines.
Yep, definitely said Marines.
Sam confirmed.
Yeah, that's what I said. But she said that Marines only work around water, and that's why they're called Marines.
Sam lit up at that. If there's one thing he loves besides pretty girls, it's apparently boring pretty girls to death by talking their ears off.
Well, you see, it's both yes and no.
Yes, hello, class,
said Mr. Vickers, just in time.
I'm sure we're all a-Twitter about this morning's latest demonstration of America's military might. However, the time has come for us to focus on algebra.
The class went on as it usually did, except for 2 interruptions. Both times the room phone rang, and it turned out that Buddy Sanger and Laura Green were being picked up early. The lucky ducks. Odd for 2 at the same time like that, though. School finished without any more air shows or early dismissals, and so begins the part of my day where I put on my pretty pink apron and paper hat. Okay, for real though, barring any more interruptions from the USMC, I'll ask her at closing time. And I super-duper meant it, but no sooner had I made it a block from school than a noise I'd only heard in video games and movies ripped through the air. I looked up just in time to spot 4 tiny silver objects in diamond formation slashing through the sky, already almost to the horizon, which was odd because it sounded like they were just overhead. Oh, right. Dr. Lansley taught me about this one too. Sound takes time to travel, so the moment an object makes noise won't necessarily be the moment you hear it. This effect is compounded when the object in question is going faster than... Suddenly the pieces came together. Those were fighter jets, and they were going supersonic. Well, that's too many coincidences in one day to ignore. Against my better judgment and the terms of my employment, I made for the trailer park. I came to Chuck's trailer and stopped. The radio was going, which was funny because his radio was always on but never playing anything. I listened a second.
If you are not in the evacuation zone, stay where you are. If you are within the evacuation area and have no transportation, locate your nearest police department or military officer. Do not use telephones or cell phones, except in the case of emergencies. Stay tuned to local news media outlets for further details and information on this situation.
What the hell? I practically pounded on his door after that. Where was that being broadcast from? No alerts had made it here. I waited while the radio screeched the unholy tones of the emergency alert system, and when the message started looping again, I took it upon myself to fish out Chuck's emergency key. It took some fumbling, but I got it and wrenched open the door. Dr. Lansley was not in his chair like he usually was, but on his bed. He was lying on top of the blankets, fully dressed with shoes and all. I stood there, embarrassed to have made such a fuss while the man was sleeping, except he didn't even twitch when I came in. A half-full glass caught my eye next to his bed. Well, that and the empty pill bottle. The screeching of the EAS took a break, and I stood there in the silence of the trailer, staring at a corpse. I damn near jumped out of my skin when the radio kicked on again.
The following message is transmitted at the request of local authorities. At 9:47 a.m. Mountain Time, a disaster of unknown type has occurred at the Black Mesa Research Facility, causing significant damage and failure to various power and communication systems in the surrounding areas.
Thanks for watching. Citizen 17 is a non-commercial, not-for-profit AI storytelling project. It is meant as a contribution to the ongoing debate regarding the ethics of integrating AI tools into human art. The project creator will not accept paid sponsorships. Advertisements, apart from work directly associated with project contributors, may be run at the discretion of the platform, but will not be requested by the project creator. Viewer subscriptions and donations will be evenly split between the creator and the commissioning of human-generated contributions for the project. It is the hope of the creator that AI tools can be leveraged to create more avenues for human creativity and artistic expression rather than replace them. Voices, with certain exceptions, were generated using the 11 Labs tool. Images, with certain exceptions, were generated by Midjourney. Light editing to voices and images were performed by a human. Music, sound effects, and Foley were generated by humans. The script for Citizen 17 was written by a human. Half-Life and associated properties are owned by Valve Software. Like and subscribe for more, and please keep the debate civil in the comments. We hope that you will continue with us on our journey to tell this story about mad science with mad science.